The story from According-Air 5665, can't take lunch because of training? I don't think so. In my mid-20s, I worked for a multinational accounting firm. I have always had a real firm policy for standing up when something doesn't sound right, irrelevant if it puts me in an awkward position. This story is how I maliciously complied and in turn made my director learn a lesson I hope she won't forget. We'll call her Karen, not her real name. Background on Karen. When she joined the team, we all liked her. She made great changes and we got on well with her. But the moment she was promoted to director and had direct reporting to the partner, she flipped, became a complete different person and made our life hell. Previously, she spent her career heading up call centers, which was really evident in her management style, and for some reason made it her mission to cut costs in the team and go under budget. This affected everything from telling us we didn't have a stationary budget for pens and had to take from other team stores, to only allowing a one-drink, one-course policy on team dinner events. This was a huge company, and other teams around us would go for fancy all-expenses-paid social events, so we felt pretty put out. Her cost-cutting also extended to things like no overtime approvals unless way in advance. That didn't last long as we were understaffed so quickly. Emergencies weren't dealt with, and hiring school leavers instead of graduates as they were cheaper, despite the work needing more experience. Her favorite saying to everything was, "It's policy," or blaming HR, or higher up saying whatever new thing, even if a new irrelevant spreadsheet would come from HR. So honestly, the amount of time HR spent on our little team in a company with 20K plus UK employees was astounding. Then came the day she booked an all-day training session from some external company to show us how to use a new system. She went on about it for weeks, was super excited that she had brought in this new system and the training was intense, so freaking technical, mind-numbing, and most of all expensive. So what would normally be covered over a few days was crammed into one full day. They were paid hourly. Shocked. She sent an email advising how we're expected to attend. It will go through the whole day and lunch would be provided, but it will be a working lunch, so training would also be through lunch. Needless to say, the thought of sitting in a stuffy room for 8 hours without a lunch break wasn't appealing. I asked for an exception, as I really relied on going outside for the hour at lunch for a break. I was in the midst of high anxiety at the time, and my breaks got me through. She said it's policy that we would be expected to change our workday around to fit training, and there is no policy that requires her to allow me to go out. If I had an issue, I should check the HR manual. I think until now, this statement usually worked for her as no one really ever checked. I went one better. I went to HR. Cue malicious compliance. Using the effective wording of "for my mental health and well-being," HR replied, and of course disagreed, as UK law mandates training as work, and an 8-hour day requires at least one HR break, which I am allowed to choose what I do with. They CC'd Karen. Karen backed down, but verbally told me it was an exception for me and to not share with the rest of the team. Of course, I didn't comply. She was breaking the law, so I showed the email chain to everyone as they were complaining about the same thing. So me and the rest of the team came up with a little plan. Sandwiches were delivered. Budget sandwiches, of course, from the supermarket down the road, instead of our slightly more expensive internal catering team who caters for this exact type of thing for our 10-floor building. I stood up and announced I was going on lunch and would be back in an hour. Cue the rest of the team, all 12 standing up after me. Karen goes, "Where are you all going?" To which someone replied, "I understand that HR said we were allowed to leave the room for the hour for lunch." The look on her face, she knew she was stuck. She couldn't say anything. We left her in there alone with the 2 trainers who seemed to guess something was up. I've never felt more satisfied in my life. We all had a good laugh about it outside. I think I even did a happy dance. She also knew she couldn't complain to me about it, as that would highlight her breaking the rules. I felt like I was walking on air all day. After this, there was much less blaming of HR, and generally she was a little skittish around me because she knew I didn't take her crap and would call her out. A second training session had to be booked since the training would never have worked in one day. There were lots of moans and groans about how expensive the extra training session costs, of course. OP's malicious compliance was perfectly executed. She used official HR policy to expose Karen's unreasonable demands, united her team to assert their rights, and cleverly forced management to admit defeat without backlash, delivering a satisfying and empowering lesson in workplace fairness. The next story from Lucy Ha. Boss wants to cut off all employees and workers from their email access over the weekend, but doesn't understand the consequences. Hello everyone, this is my first post here and wanted to share my greatest work story. My native language isn't English, so please excuse when my grammar is a bit simple. The story starts with me and my company. I'm a 30-year-old businesswoman who works in an IT service in a bank space. I'm the girl for everything, basically. But I'm a specialist for first-level support, administration, and backup, sometimes even networking. Even when I'm not head of my IT department, I'm basically had all the responsibilities of them, but unfortunately my pay grade doesn't reflect that at all. I think of my boss of my IT department as kind of lazy, if not incompetent. He even brags about getting so much money for basically doing nothing. I have a 40-hour week, but since the whole IT department is my responsibility, I need to keep track of the servers and maybe problems that can occur 24/7. This is mostly done via emails. When the server status gives out a warning or a failure, I will get notified, and then I'm fixing the problem over remote desktop or going to the company itself. Even in my free time. I wouldn't mind this, but I'm not getting paid for this. But on the other hand, I'm getting punished when something is going wrong. My boss's boss wasn't that much better. Since it was a fancy bank, everyone should be in a suit the whole time to let it look professional, best with a skirt and high heels. Only problem is when you work in the first level support, you need to do a lot of behind the scenes work, like slipping under the desk to do or repair cable management, doing work on the server rack, and doing lots of other activities that makes you dirty. You can imagine that this worn out my business clothes really fast. And not only that, they were so impractical and really made my work harder. So I changed my clothes to a comfy hoodie and work pants to fit the work I'm doing a bit better. When my boss saw me, he was furious, demanded I can't look like a poor hobo inside his bank. I told him that I demand work clothes for both occasions because they're expensive and gets worn out quickly. He refused, and I wasn't really happy about this. So much for the introduction. Someday my boss's boss, head of the whole company, called me. He had a plan. He wanted to create quiet hours. Means he didn't want his employees working on weekends to let them rest properly. At first glance, you could say, hey, that's a nice idea. Yeah. No, he just didn't like to pay them for overwork because he got in some legal trouble with overwork paying in general. And not only that, some employees have strict deadlines and need the extra time to get work done. To actively ensure nobody can't work over the weekend, he wanted the following. Please make sure no one can access their emails and remote desktop over the weekend, no exceptions. Since we had a ticket system and be able to attach emails to tickets, I asked him to write an official work task. This has two reasons. First, I like everything documented. Second, I have something to protect and secure myself if the task I was giving is incorrect. And it's exactly this that saved me. So I was in my office desk again, thinking how to get the task done and what implication it will have. And then was clear to me what it meant. The email came from my boss with the task, and indeed he wrote, for everyone, no exceptions. I was thinking to myself, should I write them? The implications it would have? After thinking, I thought of how I am treated as a worker, and I decided against it. I was working immediately at this task and made an automated process to block every access to emails after Friday 6 p.m. to Monday 6 a.m. Weekend came, and it was Saturday, and I was calm, relaxed, because if you have not noticed by now, by cutting down everyone's emails means, of course, that I don't receive any updates on the servers. I can't possibly work on it because my remote access is also cut, of course, if you think it might shoot. You could forward your work email address to your private address. No, I can't because we have a very strict data protection. Nothing is allowed to go out. I'm happy. It's still Saturday, middle of the day. I'm cooking myself and my husband a nice meal and my telephone rings. It's my boss's boss. He talks with a stressed voice and told me that he can't access his email. I needed a second to process this, but I responded, that doesn't surprise me at all since you ordered me to cut everyone's email access without exceptions. He was angry, very angry, and told me that this obviously doesn't count for him. I told him that he specifically told me that there are no exceptions, and he stated, everyone. He then argued that this wasn't how he phrased it, so I reread him his own email. After that, he was silent for a moment. He noticed his flaw in his logic. I broke the silence and asked him, sir, if you still want access to your emails on the weekend, that's no problem. Please send me a request per email, and I work on first thing on Monday. A bit angry again, he replied that he wants to have it done immediately, and I calmly explained to him that I can't do this, since my remote access is also blocked, like he ordered. He hanged up. 10 minutes later, he calls me again. He asks me calmly if I can fix the problem right now when he pays me for my overwork. He also wants me to be available at any time, means I should receive my emails and be able to remote work, and that this will raise my pay grade by a lot. I thought that this is the perfect opportunity. I agree to that condition and pay raise, but only when my co-workers and I finally get work clothes. Since then, my work situation drastically improved, and mostly only because I maliciously complied, well aware of the consequences of the given task. Thanks for reading. Edit. Thank you so much for all your comments and love. I'm glad you liked it. Edit. 2. I want to add something here to the 4 types of comments. To the people with positive comments and their own stories, thank you so much. I had no idea this would blow up this much. To the people who complain about my English, yes, I'm German, not a native speaker. I'm giving my best here and I'm trying to improve on it every day. That's all I can do. To the people with hateful comments, if you don't like it, that's totally fine, but there's no need of sharing insults, really. In my honest opinion, it was a valuable lesson for my boss to let them have a well-though concept before giving the official task. To the people who don't believe and say it's I'm not here to convince you. If I can reach even one person to empower them to improve their work condition, then that's a complete win in my eye. This malicious compliance was brilliantly executed, calm, precise, and backed by documentation. By following orders to the letter, OP exposed her boss's poor planning, forced real change, and secured better pay and conditions. A flawless, satisfying win born from strategic silence. The next story from Unfocus My Chai. Get some normal shoes right now or don't work, okay? Had overnight stock job as teenager and through early 20 as war. Heelys because linoleum and floors. Made work go much faster. Co-workers and bosses love faster work. Store managers and loss prevention security guys happy to look the other way. This goes on for over 5 years. Not one complaint from any. Not one stores do periodic inventory, and having bad inventory has detrimental effects on bonuses for store level, department level, and some of the larger departments' upper mid-level management. Also reflects poorly on district management, which can raise eyebrows of zone management. Inventory night comes. Night crew gets scheduled for 12-hour shift. Normal stuff for inventory. Rest of crew handles sales floor stuff. Put up necessary stock, make sure every allocation in store is straight and countable for inventory people. Night manager makes sure I'm there for storage organization. Everything in storage has to be recounted, coded, tagged, and stacked in designated areas by category. Building only has 1 scanner per department. Storage area is 250-300 yards long. No big deal with wheel shoes and solid knowledge of where stuff is supposed to be. So every inventory, night manager does the count, tag printed from scanner stuff, I organize stuff. Works great. 2 guys can get 5 guys work done and hand off precious scanner to department most in need. Then we join sales floor crew to help finish up. Enter department manager, night manager's boss. He had some issue with me and none of us could figure out what it was. Barely ever saw or talked to the guy. He just seemed to hate me personally. There was even an incident one time where a policy changed. The entire night crew failed to adhere to new policy, and I was the only one he wrote up for it. Snide comments here and there about my longish hair. Anyway, he comes in on his way home from the bar, red-faced, glassy-eyed, and reeking of bourbon around 11 p.m. to make sure things are going okay. Looked like he hadn't even stopped home, was still in work dress pants and white button-up shirt. Sees me doing my thing in storage area. Apparently it's suddenly a problem. He goes and gets night manager and drags him over. Night manager, why are you allowing your guy to wear these in here? Because we want to get done, he said with a laugh. I laughed too, not realizing how hostile department manager was being. Couldn't see his face. I thought he was laughing with night manager. Turns out night manager just didn't give a fuck how he felt since they rarely interacted. Night manager DGAF plus laugh from guy didn't like. Made him instantly boil over. Department manager turns to me, throws his finger about a 1/4 inch from my eye and says, "Get some normal shoes on right now or don't work." Okay, so I left. Heard the rest of the night's events over drinks at night manager's house with the crew that morning after inventory tradition. The department manager ordered sales floor crew to storage area to assist with organization, but none of them knew where things went. Department manager ended up staying all night to try and salvage things and kept issuing bad/conflicting instructions to people. At one point he slipped trying to stack things now whose shoes are a problem and landed hard on an elbow but refused treatment, probably because if they found out he was working drunk, he'd be fired. Sales floor and organization jobs were both left half done. Other departments couldn't get their stuff scanned and ready in time due to lack of scanner. Inventory team, independent contractor said conditions were unsatisfactory. for counting, and there was no way they'd be ready shortly, so they'd have to come back. Store got a bill anyway because contract. First time in company history that an inventory couldn't be completed. Night crew got sent home at scheduled time because no point in trying to finish now that inventory company left. Store manager asked night manager what happened and then immediately shredded department manager who had sweat all the way through his dirtied shirt and scuffed up his shoes and pants. Over the next couple days, as word made its way through the company, department manager was demoted, which meant his title and paycheck were drastically reduced, but he still was managing the department, which is weird, but whatever. He probably accepted it to protect a retirement package. I got a call from store manager a week later asking why I hadn't shown up for work in a week. I don't own normal shoes. Was just following orders. Don't worry though, I already put in for a transfer to another store. Store manager, I learned a couple years later, called in a favor soon after and had department manager called in as a specialist to another zone, which meant he had to sell his house and move away. His wife and kids did not move with him. I had a job doing the same thing for more money, higher volume store that same week. And yes, I wore Heelys for over 5 years. Snarky McBitchface. This malicious compliance was flawless, calm, literal, and devastating. Opie followed the absurd order exactly, letting the arrogant manager sabotage himself. One petty command unraveled an entire operation, exposed incompetence, and led to poetic downfall.